Hey there, this is Molly from Clean Food Dirty Girl, and today I'm going to be showing you my go-to recipe and method for making really, really delicious baked tofu. Okay, so a couple of things here. When I make this recipe at home for myself, I don't ever follow any kind of recipe. I just throw together stuff and whatever I have, and I make it. Now, there's a few things that I always do regardless of the specific ingredients that I make. So I'm going to walk you through that. And I tell you this just to say that this is a really, really versatile recipe. And I would like to encourage you that when you're at home kind of making your own recipes for tofu, don't be afraid to just kind of experiment and play a little bit, because you never know what delicious creations you can come up with, and you can't really screw it up. As long as you follow some like basic guidelines, you'll do a great job. Now, the other thing is, if you're newer to cooking and you don't feel comfortable kind of throwing things together, I've provided a kind of specific recipe for today's dish that I'm going to show you how to make. And I actually went through it and measured everything out so that you could measure it out exactly if you feel more comfortable doing that. And I'll kind of follow that guideline as I run through this with you. Now, the other thing to mention is if you get our plant-fueled meal plans, we have delicious tofu recipes pretty regularly. And so we give you really specific instructions on how to do those. But it's always just fun to kind of get in your kitchen and like play, right? So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to walk you through this step by step. And you can even follow along if you want. And you can kind of pause the video to catch up. Or you can watch it all the way through and then go back and do it on your own. So the first thing that I recommend is and this is for any recipe really, is before you start cooking, gather all of your ingredients together and put them in one place before you start. Because then you won't be worrying about like running back and forth to the cupboards and the fridge and everything else. You have all of your ingredients all in one spot. So I'll show you what that looks like for me. So I kind of put everything all together there. So all my ingredients are here. My cutting board is here. All of the tools that I need are here. And for the purpose of this video, I actually chopped my ginger and onion, or ginger and garlic already, so we can get through this faster. But like if you follow our meal plans, you know that we give you like a whole prep section to do before you actually start cooking. And that can be a really good thing to do to speed up your cooking. Because the deal with plant-based cooking is that most of like the 80% of the time you spend is going to be chopping and dicing and slicing vegetables, basically, and that's what takes the longest. So if you do that in the beginning, kind of get that stuff out of the way, then you can just throw recipes together much quicker. Okay, so let's talk about this tofu. I have a package of organic firm tofu here. Now, there are lots of different types of tofu out there, and it doesn't, like, this is firm. I think this was the one that was on sale. Extra firm works really well for this particular recipe. I would stay away from soft tofu for any kind of baked tofu or stir fries or sautés, and definitely stay away from silken tofu. So silken tofu is the type that you want to puree if you're making like a cream pie or like a tofu mayo, something that's going to be blended and needs to be really creamy and smooth. It's not so much for slicing and baking or sauteing. So firm or extra firm tofu is great for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down a little bit. There we go. And I usually just do this in my sink, but you know, you're going to be careful when you open it because there's water that it's packed in. And so get that out of the way. You want to take the tofu out of the package and drain it. And then what I always do is just rinse it. So rinse it with a little bit of water. And then this is a really important step. You want to press the remaining liquid out of your block of tofu. And before I do it, I'm going to tell you why. So because tofu comes, most tofu, apart from silken tofu, comes packaged in water, most of them. Now there are brands that you can get, I think Wildwood has a tofu that's a firm tofu that doesn't come in water, that's just in a package. So if you get that particular type of tofu, there's no need to press any water out. Just if it comes in a package with water, that's when you want to press it out. And the reason is because you don't want that water to land down the ingredients, right? So if there's too much liquid left over, it's going to be, if you're going to have a blander final product, because there's going to be a lot of water mixed with it. So it dilutes it a little bit. Okay, so this is the method that I use to press out tofu. Now, I use a plate, a cutting board, and a skillet. You can buy a fancy tofu press. I've never had one, but that is always an option. And I'm sure they do a great job. I've just always stuck with a plate that has like a little ridge. So you don't want a flat plate because there's going to be like liquid here at the bottom that will spill over the plate if it's totally flat. So you want to choose a plate with a little dip in it. And then what I do is get my cutting board and just set it on top of the tofu, kind of centered out a little bit. And then I take a skillet and I just put it right on top. Now I want to make sure that it's even, because if I get it too far to the left or the right or back or forward, the tofu will kind of go over one way. And I want it right kind of in the middle so that it's just all going straight down. That's it. Easy. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside, and this is the first step. In any recipe that where you use tofu that it says to press it, you want to start pressing it right away. 10 to 15 minutes is usually fine. You can press it for longer. If you don't have that long, maybe like minimum 5 minutes, but just make sure that you set that aside and at least get some of the water out of there. Now you can also like get paper towels or a clean kitchen cloth and kind of press on it so that that cloth or paper towel absorbs some of that liquid. But I like to do this because then it gives me time then to prepare the rest of the ingredients that I'm using for the recipe. Okay. So, and again, this recipe is written totally down below this video in this blog post, so you can follow along. But I will start with a little mixing bowl. And yes, I need to get, here we go. I need a liquid measuring cup and a tablespoon. Now, again, if I was doing this on my own, I wouldn't be measuring. I would just be throwing stuff together. But I'm going to measure it out for you guys. Okay, so we're going to start with coconut aminos. I always give this a little bit of shake. Coconut aminos is sort of like soy sauce, but it's a little bit thicker and sweeter. It comes from the sap of coconut trees. So it's really, really delicious. Adds a very nice kind of savory flavor with a little hint of sweet. So I'm going to do 1/4 of a cup of that. And I just measure all of this in a liquid 1 cup measuring cup. Okay. Now I'm going to measure out 1/4 cup of organic brown rice vinegar. You can use regular rice vinegar. I like organic brown rice. That's my favorite. It's really flavorful and delicious. So 1/4 cup of this. So we're going to go to the 1/2 cup mark. And then we will use 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And I always buy organic, low sodium soy sauce. This just happens to be in a Hello Kitty soy sauce container that I just reused. Okay, so we're going to put 2 tablespoons of this in here. And again, like this does not have to be exact at all. This is a very forgiving recipe. And I'm going to use, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed orange juice. So there's 1 and 2, that's almost 2. I just have this orange and I'll just squeeze a little bit more in there. Watch for seeds. That's good. Okay. And then 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Now, I have a very tricky time saying that name, Worcestershire sauce. But I think I did it pretty well. Now, you want to make sure that this, whatever Worcestershire, whatever sauce you get, make sure that it's vegan, because there's most Worcestershire sauces aren't vegan, but it'll say on the package if it's vegan or not. Okay, so there's that. Now we're going to do a tablespoon of ginger and a tablespoon of garlic. So this is the end. This is all of the liquid ingredients. So at this point, I'm just going to pour this into this little mixing bowl. And again, like if I wasn't measuring this out, I would just put it directly in this mixing bowl. But I was measuring it out this time. And then we have a tablespoon of ginger I'm going to put in the mixing bowl, and a tablespoon of garlic in the mixing bowl. Okay. So I am going to show you 2 quick little tips for preparing ginger and garlic before we move on. So I'm going to grab a cutting board, and here we go. Okay, so ginger. When I'm putting ginger in like smoothies or juice, I don't peel it. But when I'm putting it in recipes, I do peel it. And a really easy way to get the peel of ginger off is just to take a spoon and just simply scrape the peel off. So we'll just kind of go down, and that peel comes right off. And then you're just left with this little papery-like peel that you can put into your compost and be done with it. So then I just chop it up. I like to get young kind of baby ginger because it's just softer and I find it more flavorful. But that spoon trick will work with any kind of ginger that you get. And then a little trick with garlic is an easy way to get off the peel of garlic. Let me just wipe my hands here. You need a knife, like a chef's knife that has kind of a big blade on it. You want to put the garlic on your cutting board, and then with the side of your blade, just set it on the garlic, and with your fist, just like kind of press down, and that papery part will come right off. So you have the garlic and the paper part, and then you can just chop the garlic. So anyways, this is what I do with garlic. Easy peasy. Okay, so going on. Can you tell that I'm just using my computer to do this? Whatever works, right? All right, so at this point, I will mix all these ingredients. The only other thing I need to do now is put in some green onions. Now, I like a lot of green onions. I love green onions, and you can't put too much green onions in any recipe as far as I'm concerned. They add such a nice flavor. And I like to slice them using a sharp serrated knife, because sometimes if you slice them with a regular knife, they don't cut all the way through. So here's what we're gonna do. I just take the end pieces and just kind of root end, I cut that off. And then I usually kind of check out the ends. If there's some kind of funky ends, maybe I'll take them out. I try to use as much of them as I can so I'm not wasteful. Then I just cut them in half, and then I bring them together. And then I'll cut them in half again and bring them together. And at this point, I'll just start slicing. And just watch for your fingers. And you can see with this serrated knife, I'm really getting all the way through the onion. And the size doesn't really matter because this is going to be baked anyways, so it'll go down in size. And okay, that's good. So At this point, if I were just doing it on my own, I would just add this amount, but let's see how close to a cup I got. We're gonna call it pretty darn close. I could probably slice one more. And let's see. And then we'll call that good. And again, I cut it in half so that it doesn't take me as long to slice it. So I'm not slicing like the whole entire length of it. Okay. There we go. And once you get towards the end, leave the bigger piece, if you have bigger pieces, it's okay. All right, so that gets us to 1 cup. And again, if you don't want as much, then don't put as much in. If you want a little bit more, put a little bit more in. There's no rules, it's fun. We're meant to play. Okay, so at this point, the tofu is still pressing, and I am going to just put these green onions right in my little mixing bowl, take my fork, and just mix. Now this mixture is gonna be really thick looking right now because of all the green onions and all the ginger and all the garlic. And here's my next tip about tofu. It's really bland. It's like a sponge. It soaks up whatever flavor and ingredients you give it. So, quick backstory. A couple nights ago, I went out to like this really nice restaurant and ordered this tofu dish that this waitress really recommended. And it came out and it was like, there was a delicious kind of lemongrass coconut broth. And then there was 2 slabs of raw tofu in the broth. And that was it. And it just drives me nuts because I think what people do is they treat tofu as it's fish or as it's chicken or as it's any other kind of like meat, because tofu has a lot of protein and it's used as sort of like a meat substitute, right? But people who don't know what to do with it and how to cook it, you can't just put it on a plate and call it done. Like, it's far from done. And it was a very, like, the broth was okay at the restaurant, but the tofu itself was terrible. Like, I didn't even eat it because it was just boring, bland, raw tofu pretty much. So you have to do something with it. You have to give it a marinade. You have to saute it in lots of yummy ingredients. You have to get lots of alliums in there. You have to bake it with lots of ingredients. And, it'll take on whatever flavor you give it. And so I think that tofu gets a bad rap a lot of the times because people just don't know what to do with it. And you really do have to like really infuse a ton of flavor into it and then make sure you cook it, right? So now the only place I've had delicious like raw tofu is in Japan, and it was freshly made and it was delicious. But other than that, and you don't necessarily have to cook it. Like, we have a recipe on the blog for a tofu salad, which is kind of like an egg salad that's raw and it's delicious. But again, it has lots of ingredients. It has like a plant-based mayo and then nutritional yeast and black salt and onions and like red onions and all of this stuff to really make that flavor pop. So tofu is really versatile because you can really you can really have it take on a lot of different flavors, but you just got to work with it and know what you're doing. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do now is, you can see, there's quite a lot of liquid on this plate. And I'll just take the tofu off from here, put it on the cutting board, and then I'll just put that liquid in the sink. And that's that. So I'm going to slice it. Now, how many slices you get really depends on how thick you like it, right? And because this is a baked tofu recipe that I'm going to bake in a skillet, I'm going to put a cast iron skillet directly in the oven. And because I do this all the time, I know that about 9 slices of tofu fit really well in here. So what you don't want to do is have so many slices that the tofu is on top of each other. You want to make sure that they're just side by side. So the slices can't be too thick or too thin in order to get like 9 slabs, but anywhere from like 8 to 10 slices should be fine depending on the size of your skillet. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to, and it turns out to be probably half inch slices. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I have the 9 slices, and now this is, it's pretty soft because this is soft tofu, but it's not going to fall apart, but you do want to be gentle with it. So from here, I'm going to pour this marinade that we made into the skillet. And it's going to seem like a lot of marinade for this amount of tofu. However, you really need a lot of marinade because I mentioned earlier, tofu is kind of like a sponge. It'll suck up liquid. It'll suck up, it absorbs it. So you really want to make sure that you have enough marinade to really allow the tofu to get nice and flavorful. So from here, I'm just going to set the tofu in the skillet. Turn this over a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to do all 9 pieces. And some can go on top of the green onions. You can kind of push the green onions and the ingredients around. As long as all pieces get in there. Now this is kind of the first step. And they can be tight with each other. Like they don't have to have lots of room. They're going to have to squeeze up against each other to fit 9. But you can do it. There we go. And it will get a little bit smaller as it bakes. Okay, so we have all 9 pieces here in the skillet now. And what we're going to do is, there we go. And I just use my clean hands. I'll just take the tofu over and flip it so that the sides that didn't have as much marinade are now face down in the marinade. And this is enough marinade so that the tofu can kind of lay in it and some of it can go over top of it. And you can kind of take some green onions and put those on top. But just flip over every piece so that each piece has been flipped once. And I just like to take some of this green onion, ginger, garlic mixture and just kind of drape it on top here. Okay. All right, so we have now this delicious smelling and looking tofu in the skillet. Now, marinating is kind of a key thing. It depends on how much time you have and when you want to eat this tofu. So you could put this in the fridge and marinate this like for a few hours or up to overnight. What I usually do is at this point, I will preheat my oven to 375. And when my oven is ready and reaches temperature, then I'll just pop this into the oven. So it will give my tofu, maybe 10 minutes to kind of get some of this goodness all absorbed. And so that's what I'll do. So I'll go over and preheat my oven to 375. I better take my sheet pans out of the oven. Okay. Now, I could put the tofu on a sheet pan like this. However, I like to do it this way because I like having these sides. Because what these sides do is they kind of contain things and it doesn't dry out the tofu. It keeps it really moist, even though it's baked and kind of firm. So this is my favorite way to do it. Now I do it with the pan too sometimes, but if I'm just whipping together a quick recipe because I want baked tofu to put on salads or sandwiches or eat with rice and veggies, this is my go-to method. I prefer the texture from this method. So from here, I'll just set this to the side and I'll put something over top of it I have a little kind of, well, I'll show you. Okay, hold on. I'm coming. Just a second. Here we go. So I have this like food cover that I'll just set on top of it, so that, you know, we have lizards here in Hawaii, geckos and stuff like that. So and sometimes if Sweet Pea gets an idea to get up on the counter while the oven is preheating and this is setting there, this will just save it from animals or lizards or anything getting in there. So we'll just set that aside and wait for the oven to come to temperature. And this is a good opportunity to then clean up your counter space, right? You can wash your dishes, put away your ingredients, and then by the time you pop the tofu in, then everything will be cleaned up. You just gotta wait for it to bake, and your kitchen's already cleaned. So I'm gonna see you back here when my oven reaches temperature, okay? Awesome. Okay, I just heard my oven beep, so it is time to put this in the oven. So I'm gonna put it into the oven just like this. Doesn't get a lid, nothing. Just gonna put it right on in there. And now it's been about 10 minutes and the tofu has already soaked up a bit of this marinade. And it'll continue to do so as it cooks. So one thing that I like to do is, I'm notorious for multitasking and getting a lot of things going at once. And so I have this little kitchen timer, and it's very, very helpful. So I will set the timer for, let's see, 25 minutes. And then that way I won't forget about it and have burnt tofu. So this is the first round. Since I pressed it, I better get it in here. And I like to put it on the middle rack. So this is just going to bake for 25 minutes. When 25 minutes is up, I'm going to take it out, flip over each piece of tofu, and put it back in the oven for another 20 to 25 minutes. That might seem like a long time, but again, tofu, the longer it cooks, the firmer it'll get. Now, it's never going to get super hard like a steak or like a regular burger, but it will get firm. So, but you got to give it plenty of time. Just putting it in the oven for 10 minutes and taking it out isn't gonna give it all that good of a consistency and a texture. So we have to go for, I like to do it for 25 minutes, flip it, and then do another 20 to 25 minutes. So I will see you back here when 25 minutes is up. Bye for now. Hey there. Okay, so the timer just went off. It's been 25 minutes. So I'm going to take the tofu out of the oven and show you what it looks like. And then I'll flip it. Okay, so be warned that this is obviously extremely hot. So I really like to wear one of these big thick mitts. Okay, so here's what it looks like now. And you can see that there's still quite a lot of marinade. And the tofu has gotten kind of smaller. The onions have kind of shrunk in size. And this is good. What we want to do is I'm going to flip over each piece of tofu. So to do that, I don't want to put that pot directly on my counter. So I just put a little coaster there. Okay. So I will take a spatula and just, let's see, there we go, gently flip each piece over. And you can see it's quite soft still. That's okay. It'll get more firm the longer it bakes, and also then when it cools, it'll firm up too. And I'm using soft tofu or firm tofu and not extra firm, which I usually get extra firm, but this just happened to be on sale, so I bought that one. Okay, so each of these pieces is flipped over, and it's ready to go back in the oven for another 25 minutes. So I have 25 minutes on the clock. I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to pop it back in the oven without a lid. And then I will see you back here when it is done. Hey there. Okay, I'm back and the timer just went off, so it's been 50 minutes altogether. Now I wanted to let you know too that some ovens cook hotter than other ovens and vice versa. Some don't cook as hot as other ovens. So just keep in mind that when you check your tofu again after you flipped it, you might want to take a look at like the 20-minute mark just to see what it's doing. So if I'm going to come over here and take it out. Now, this is what mine looks like, and I want you to know that this sort of browning is normal. This isn't necessarily burnt here. This is actually exactly how I like it. And you can see, put this down a little bit, that when I flip it over, it's just perfect. So there's no more liquid in the skillet. There's just bits of the green onion and bits of the ginger and garlic. And I always like to flip it again right after I take it out of the oven. And then what I do is I just leave it in here. Right? So I'll flip every single piece. Did I flip that piece already? I think so. Maybe not. Better get that one. Okay, there we go. So I flipped all of them, and you can see no more liquid in the skillet. It's totally dried up. And that's what you're going for. So what I do is just set this on my stove top. I'll go do that right now. And at that point, I'll just let it cool. Now, I'll take that same food cover that I showed you earlier and just set that on top of the skillet. And I'll just let it cool in the skillet. And it'll still be cooking a little bit because that skillet, right, is going to be super hot. It retains heat. And so it's still going to be cooking a little bit. And that's fine. I mean, it's not burnt. It's perfect. And if it cooks a little bit more, even better. So when you're deciding like when to take your tofu out of the oven, you can try 25 minutes and 25 minutes. But basically, when all of the liquid has been absorbed, you know that that's a pretty good time to take it out of the oven. And we had quite a lot of liquid. That was like a cup of liquid for one box of tofu. So it takes about almost an hour of cooking for that all to get nice and absorbed. And now the tofu is going to be, like the flavor is going to be totally just all in the tofu, not just on the two sides, but it's going to be in the middle, and you're going to get a burst of flavor with every bite. And keep in mind too, it's best, now I'm not going to eat this right away. I want to wait and just let it cool in that skillet for like at least an hour before I try it. And even after an hour, it'll still be warm because it'll continue to firm up and it'll kind of continue to do its thing. So don't eat it right away. Like when you make this recipe, just give yourself time. You know, if you're going to make it for dinner, maybe make it in the morning or make it the next day. And then when it's totally cool, I'll transfer it to like a glass container and just pop it in the fridge. And then I could heat it up in a skillet, in an air fryer, in a toaster oven, or I just eat it cold. Like if I have a big green salad, I'll just like cube up some pieces of the baked tofu, put it on top of the salad, put some dressing, tomatoes, carrots, some veggies, and it adds a really nice texture and flavor to salads. Or I'll make like quinoa and then just put a couple of these, like 3 pieces of tofu next to the quinoa, and then do some sauteed veggies, drizzle maybe a little bit of sauce on things. So, use your imagination, have fun. But it's a great starting point to kind of have a main really yummy component done with your meals if you do this ahead of time. So, and again, if you want more recipes like this with that level of flavor and intention and, all this yumminess, then sign up for our meal plans. We have you covered. We give you brand new recipes every single week that you'll not only batch cook, but then put together throughout the week to make delicious meals from the items that you batch cooked. And like I said, we don't always do tofu, but we rotate between tofu and tempeh, and we do all the plant foods. And we do them. We have a very, very high bar for deliciousness. And the thing about eating a whole food plant-based diet is like it has to taste good, especially for people who are brand new to eating this way. It's really important that there's a lot of flavor and that it tastes good, or else it probably won't happen. All right, I hope you make this recipe, and if you haven't joined our private Facebook group yet, I would love it if you did that and take a picture of this recipe and tag me in that group so I can see what you thought. And it's been great to hang out with you today. I hope you have an awesome day, and now go make tofu. Okay, bye!